Two suspects accused of instigating the recent violence and looting are set to appear in court today. One will be at the Randfontein Magistrates Court, while the other will appear at the Western Area Magistrates Court. One of the suspects is said to be behind a voice note inciting violence on social media. A 21-year-old woman has also been arrested. Now, she's expected to appear in court on Tuesday. Over 200 people have lost their lives as a result of the unrest in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Well, on that note, police say that at least 3 alleged instigators are in police custody. So what charges await them? And where's the line drawn between inciting violence and outright insurrection? To help us answer those questions, I'm now joined by constitutional law expert Rebecca Sibanda of course, joining us right here on eNCA. Ms. Sibanda, thank you for your time and good morning to you. Let's start here. 3 suspects expected to appear in court at least this week. 2 today, the next tomorrow, at least a 21-year-old woman, we understand. What charges do they possibly face here?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. So at the moment, anybody who is considered to be an inciter of public violence will be charged in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act for inciting, or a conspiracy to incite public violence. That will probably be the first charge. And you have other charges linked to that would, be linked to looting. So the robbery, the theft, the malicious damage to property. And I think those would be the main charges for those people. I think were the Cyber Crimes Act, which has been signed into law but hasn't commenced, were that law be in operation at the moment, I think it would be primarily positioned to allow for, incitement on the internet. As we've seen, social media has been an instrumental tool for people who have been participating in the incitement or the encouragement of public violence. So at present, they will be charged, as I've said, in terms of the CPA for the listed crimes.
You mentioned social media. What comes to mind then is what about those who retweet, those who share, either voice notes or even tweets circulating on social media? Because one way or the other, you have found in your mailbox or on Twitter in your timeline a message around either violence or the instigation of violence. What about those?
Like I've said, it's very unfortunate that the Cyber Crimes Act has not yet commenced, because that would be the law that would generally cover all the kind of uncertainty we're seeing on the internet. So at present, a retweet doesn't necessarily qualify as you participating in incitement, even though you are sharing the content. So we need a law that delineates or very specifically identifies what a crime on social media is. Yeah. So until that commencement, people who use the internet, unless their accounts are verified as being the person that they say they are, it's difficult to prosecute.
Interesting. Let's also come to, the point that we had made here on channel regarding clarification being needed on the difference between inciting violence and insurrection. What does the law say in this regard?
So inciting violence, I think you can see the first kind of iteration of that in the Constitution. So it falls under the things that are prohibited when it comes to the freedom of expression. So the right to freedom of expression is given to everyone. It's extended to all people except under certain grounds. And one of those grounds is when you use your freedom of expression to incite imminent violence. And that then is also iterated in the CPA and the Cyber Crimes Act, as we know. And that requires a person or a group of people to actively, encourage violence, to encourage certain unlawful conduct. And the imminent element is essential because you have to expect or feel a threat that violence will happen anytime soon. And that's the first thing. And I think that when it comes to an insurrection or a coup, the words have been used interchangeably by people, in our government. I think it's important to note that there has to be an active, violent attempt to overthrow a constitutionally elected government in a way that's, it's very easily to identify. So, for example, what we saw in the US earlier this year with the storming of the Capitol buildings. And you have to see, taking up of arms. So certain jurisdictions describe it as the taking up of arms to violently overthrow a government. And in this case, unfortunately, because of the scale and just the muddying of the waters when it comes to the violence and the looting that we've seen, it's difficult to identify this kind of conduct as an insurrection. And I think it's also important for our government to start speaking, with one voice. Yeah. Because yesterday in the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, the Minister of Defense said it wasn't an insurrection or a coup. And her reasoning was that there was no face. They couldn't identify who was behind it. Therefore, it couldn't be necessarily defined as a coup. Yet we've heard the President and the Deputy Minister of the SSA saying it is an insurrection. So I think that the uncertainty based on the description or the requirements for an insurrection in our literature and our jurisprudence makes it difficult to identify it as an insurrection. But also, I think with the time of confusion that we're experiencing, our government needs to decide what they've identified or classified the events as in order for the appropriate response to be taken. So we can't have government speaking and saying on one side it's an insurrection and on one side it's not.
I couldn't agree with you more there, Rebecca, especially because even the president himself in the beginning said, he's got reason to believe that it's ethnic mobilization, and then at the back then said change to it's not ethnic mobilization, it's what they believed to be at the outset. But you know what, we'll have to leave it there due to time. But thank you for clarifying this for us. Constitutional law expert Rebecca Sibanda. Also just